Just coffee and maybe 12 hours of coma-level sleep. That's all I request. I grumbled the steering wheel cool against my weary grasp as I at last turned into my street. 42 hours of being awake on stale protein bars and the lingering adrenaline of a messy extraction in Switzerland. Something with raw pasta as a cipher delivery method, don't even ask, had left me feeling like frayed cord. The Alps were beautiful, of course, but freezing your bones off while evading unsavory characters has a way of putting a damper on the enjoyment. All I needed was my bed, my shower, my non-HOA ordered life. But pulling up to my driveway, the first prickle of fear hit me. Something didn't sit. Well, the landscaping was usually immaculately manicured. I paid good money for that snooty botanical garden look. Appeared unruffled, wilder than it should be after 2 weeks. No mail spilled out of the box. No newspaper sat on the step. Then I saw the welcome mat, my old one, a sarcastic remark involving warrants expired, substituted with a stiff corporal-looking item that said, "Clients begins at the door." Shouted HOA, maybe just Karen being Karen, I thought. But a flash of motion in one of the windows of a neighbor, a curtain closing too quickly, sent a chill over from the mission paranoia. Alex wake up from it. The true shock was to come at the front door. My key slipped in, but wouldn't turn. Tried again, upside down, nothing back door. Same resistance garage keypad. Dead sleep deprivation was causing me to stagger. Perhaps then I saw it stuck, glaring on the new unfamiliar deadbolt. A neon orange sticker peeling a little at one corner. Access denied by HOA Security Authority property. Temporarily confiscated under Article 12C of Community Code, Conduct Call, HOA Authority for Access. Confiscated, my brain went from slow to DEFCON. One in an instant, I scanned around deserted street, no witnesses. Fine, I bent down, scraped a bit of bark off my boot sole, and retrieved the bent hairpin. I always had stashed there for emergencies. Saw a sturdy twig among the rose bushes. 15 seconds, all it took. The click of satisfaction rang out louder than it ought to have as the door creaked open. A shriek sliced through the air. "You can't do that. That's an invasion." Karen standing on her front lawn on the opposite side of the street, hands on hips radiating righteous indignation. Her jaw all but unhinged. As I just looked at her, then stepped. Forget the shower for now. I let my duffel bag with its slight jet fuel and regret aroma stroll straight back out and in the direction of the glorified shed they called the HOA office. The automated phone line unsurprisingly went to voicemail. Karen sat behind a faux wood desk, sipping from a mug with the words, "I'm not bossy, I'm authoritative," on it. She didn't even blink, just produced a tight, smug smile that fell a little short of her eyes. It was practiced. "Oh, Alex back already?" Her nasal, condescending tone. "We did notice your prolonged absence. Neighbors complained strange cars, odd times. A vote was taken. You were deemed security risk nearby." Security risk nearby? Are these even actual rules? Karen, they are now. She sniffed, gliding a laminated sheet across the desk. Infractions included grass texture, inconsistent with neighborhood appearance, excessive garage security, and lack of outward seasonal cheer. It was totally insane. Then the kicker, the 72-hour temporary visitor pass to my own house. I didn't complain, didn't scream. I just took the pass, turned around and left. Wheels were spinning in the background. Karen wasn't smart enough or courageous enough to try this prank on her own. Not changing locks on a property I owned. Outright, someone else had taught her, and the timing. Right after I got back, no. This was no longer just about arrogant landscaping anymore. This was something else entirely. My peaceful suburban street suddenly felt a lot less safe, holding the ridiculous laminated visitor guides my entrance to my own hell house for the next 72 hours. I walked back down the cursed curved walk Karen once tried to find someone for security risk bordering grass texture violations. The absurdity was a smoke-ox screen. Karen wasn't masterminding this. She was playing poorly. The smugness, the pre-prepared list of violations. The timing, it stank. Someone else was yanking the strings of someone who wanted me locked out, perhaps watched immediately after I got back from a mission that hadn't quite ended tidily. That Pastor Cipher seemed like a lifetime ago. but the paranoia it instilled was new. This wasn't merely HOA tyranny. It felt personal. Professional shower and sleep were out of the question time. For step 1 of any decent ground assessment walk, the dog issue was. I didn't have a dog, didn't stuff in neighborhoods such as this. A purposeful man striding along with an empty leash gets ignored, dismissed, or sometimes pied ideal cover for surveillance. I fetched an old leash from the garage, threaded my thumb through it, and began my patrol, assuming the absent-minded gaze of one lost in thought about canine bowel habits. The sensation of being watched was growing almost at once. Not obvious, just provide a delivery van draped over the curb. Curtains flailed, a jogger rounded the corner, earbuds in, but his eyes swept too self-consciously focused on my house. Then me, as I self-consciously slowed going along, as if Biscuit were studying a most fascinating clump of crabgrass. The jogger staggered for half a second, his step briefly disrupted before continuing on. Not evidence, but another data point flag for the something is seriously wrong column. Then I saw it was parked 2 blocks off. Partially screened by an oak tree was a white van, generic bland. Otherwise, except for the 5 mismatched antennas that stuck out from the roof like metallic weeds, and the faint outline where a thermal imaging sticker had clearly been peeled off the side panel. Definitely not Gary's pest control, as I snuck, angling to see better. The side door creaked open an inch. I caught a glimpse of a guy inside wearing a professional-grade comms headset. He saw me clock him no hesitation engine on van, sliding smoothly away. No logo, no phone number. I snapped a quick pic with my phone. The license plate naturally was obscured by a conveniently placed smudge. Later, the barcode I had been able to grab on the back panel came back in valid surveillance, blatant if you knew what to look for. Back home, sitting on a lukewarm coffee I did not trust enough to drink, I pulled out my handheld signal detector standard sweep, the standard Wi-Fi signatures, Bluetooth noise, then wham, a low-frequency pulsed signal, military-grade pinging, steadily, too clean, too directional for ambient tech. I triangulated. It led me straight across the street to the ornamented birdhouse atop Karen's flagpole. A birdhouse tricked out like a signals intelligence center. This was past HOA. It was time to acquire Miles. Miles resided 3 houses down, in a house that always appeared to be on the verge of collapsing, held together by stubborn ivy. And I surmised plain force of will within, though, was a virtual bunker. Ex-Navy Crip specialist turned half-retired Cracker Miles had an IOU to me from a squalid affair involving offshore servers and unlucky bets in Macau. I found him slumped over a keyboard under the glow of 6 monitors, jammed with crawling streams of code problem. Alex, he asked, not looking up, fingers in motion. You could say got an odd transmission, I need eyes on, pulsed encrypted military band. Seems to be emanating from Karen's birdhouse. Miles finally turned one raised eyebrow. Karen, the queen of lawn ornaments. Maybe just some Cold War surplus material she bought off the internet. Directional antenna. Miles aimed straight at my house. And there was a van. I immediately reported what I'd seen. He leaned back, stroking beard. Okay, that's fewer boring. Give me the frequency. As he worked plugging into network analyzers, I was pretty certain weren't on the market. His usual sarcastic commentary died down. He scowled. Hold up, this is an amateur hour, clean signal-tight beam. And it's passing data packets through a surreal relay. Hang on, his fingers smeared. A new window opened on his main screen. Alex, someone just attempted a brute force entry on my secure gateway right after I pinging that birdhouse relay complex effort. My blood ran cold. They weren't just watching, they were reacting. Can you handle it? Yeah, firewall held, routed the attack vector to a honeypot in Vladivostok. But now they know somebody's snooping around. This just got exciting. What's plan B? Plan B is we scope out what's in the HOA nerve center tonight midnight. The HOA office complex. Strip mall glorified unit was Dark Miles. Disabled the main security feed loop remotely. The back door had a heavy magnetic lock, corporate grade. Need a credit card you don't care about? Miles asked. Over our encrypted comms link, I gave him my expired Blockbuster card. 20 seconds of jimmying. Later, we slipped inside. The main office smelled of cheap air freshener and paranoia walls plastered with laminated rules. But the real prize was a padlocked door with HOA-compliant storage employees. Only Miles made short work of the keypad with a signal decoder. We walked in, and my wind stopped. It wasn't storage, it was a mini NSA facility. Shelves of servers hummed quietly. Monitors had live feeds from hidden cameras facing multiple homes, including mine filing cabinets, contained printed surveillance logs, residence times leaving for work. Packages received observations, suspicious gatherings, suspected backyard barbecues. USB thumb drives had streets names imprinted thereon. Subsequently, I chanced upon the folder whose name was mine and not Alex. My front name, my name of the agency, whose Karen's colleagues did not know. Inside the photos of me, leaving the premises at many disguises over the years, GPS timestamps of my car license plates. Bracingly particular, there were corresponding thin dossiers on 3 other residence persons. I vaguely recalled all with federal employment records, past or present. Metadata tags on the computer files connected this server to comparable systems in HOL communities around the peripheries of DC and San Diego. This was not merely local on a Next tablet. A chat window had just been shut. Miles worked his magic, remotely bringing back the deleted log from the server cache pseudonym handle, Sable Eagle. The last message sent read, "Target still unaware, local puppet complaint going according to plan. Interference will be neutralized if needed." Another message log was that communication frequency spiking wildly some 48 hours before my return from Switzerland. Right when my project was finished, puppet, I gasped. That's it. Karen was leveraging her obsession, using this entire HOA as a cover company to run an advanced spy operation against current and former Intel employees. And it wasn't an accident. The timing felt really connected to whatever mess I just escaped out of in the Alps miles. I whispered into the comms, downloading everything I could on an encrypted drive. This has nothing to do with HOA rules. They're coming after us again in the comparative and hopefully temporary safety of my own 4 walls. The HOA office penetration adrenaline wore off, slowly replaced by a sour calculating anger. Miles's voice broke over our encrypted comms channel. His earlier voiced uncertainty, completely forgotten 32 active nodes. Alex, 32 birdhouses, sprinkler controllers, rocks. Even a few of those tacky garden gnomes. All of this information being channeled through Karen's server, then bouncing off that weird relay. We found this isn't just your block. It's a 10-block area, at least maybe more. And according to those metadata tags, this playbook's been run elsewhere, my agency name. In their databases, the connection to other federal personnel, the timing was connected with my Swiss assignment at the image, was being frighteningly uncovered. Karen was not just a puppet, but the key franchise manager for a commercial intelligence network, processing surveillance of individuals such as myself, likely in the interest of community security and Sable Eagle. Whoever they were in charge, they may not have been just watching. They were hunting, okay? I explained, pacing my living room, checking out corners. Out of habit, Phase 1 was gathering. Intel Phase 2 starts. Now time to rattle the cage. Let's christen it, Operation Suburban Showdown Miles. Chuckled darkly, catchy. What's the strategy? Full scorched earth, not yet. That's later. First we pretend stupid. We disturb their network quietly. We make Karen freak out. We make the Sable Eagle overcompensate, reveal their cards. The next HOA community picnic was the perfect setting. I was dressed in my loudest Hawaiian shirt and carrying a container of pre-prepped potato salad and wearing a silly, clueless grin. I regaled whoever had bothered to listen with fabricated tales of being off-ridden in Montana, communing with nature, and writing a truly horrid book about smart tree fairies. The sheer drivel made Karen visibly wince as she approached clipboard in hand. Her smile pasted on so tight it seemed to be torture. She made a big deal over having me back, complimenting my smooth red regulation, defying garden ornaments. Later, she handed me a brand new letter detailing a new community safety scheme. The emphasis, voluntary in-home inspection checks to ensure house safety levels. Voluntary inspections. I made an impressed admiration. Wow, Karen, that sounds completely thorough. Did you create this yourself, or is it in a bigger program? She wished for a moment we had the assistance of a consulting team. She described hesitantly, specialists in new ways of monitoring. Interesting, what's their name? I'd love to look up their work. It's need-to-know basis. She brushed off quickly for security reasons, of course, bingo. She didn't know who she was actually working for. That ignorance was my leverage. I spent the next few days quietly feeding misinformation into the suspected intercept devices, blathering at the top of my voice on the phone about imaginary employment opportunities in Alaska, conferring about non-existent security system upgrades with Miles over an open frequency. We knew they were tapping. Let them spin their wheels. Then came the interference using a hand-built signal scrambler Miles had thrown together. I took casual strolls past every known spy the gnomes imitating rocks lampposts, featuring a repeating recording of a vacant road, or blissfully flailing squirrel their screens would flash nothing. A loss while their true eyes remained blind. Afterwards, I hijacked the HOA's Deer drone by using a created backdoor within its firmware, not its standard patrol pattern. It spent an afternoon tirelessly followed Karen's car, like an out-of-control buzzing puppy, sitting in her car just outside her driver's side window. Accounts of her wild swerving and frantic calls filled. The neighborhood Facebook group, the Piesta Resistance, arrived at the HOA's weekly yard standards inspection time, perfectly timing a remote command. The timing was impeccable. I activated all smart sprinkler systems on the block at once. As Karen and her inspection committee made the turn, she slipped on a suddenly wet strip of pavement and crashed squarely in Mrs. Henderson's award-winning collection of ceramic garden gnomes. Someone videotaped the pretty flailing scene. It made it to TikTok by evening, captioned, "Ha Karen versus the Gnome Rebellion." They lashed back, not surprisingly, but amping up the morning after the sprinkler debacle, "My car won't start dead." Not a battery issue, the ignition had been masterfully rigged, a quick call to Miles. A few frantic minutes of him remotely troubleshooting and leaping over the burned circuit via the car's OBD2 outlet. And I was back in motion, but the message was conveyed. They were done playing passive Saturday arrived day of my meticulously organized, fully HOA-compliant backyard barbecue permits. In permits filed decibel levels, pre-approved decorations, stringently adhering to Rule 7 subsection pastel shades, only as neighbors gingerly indulging ribs and lemonade in the suddenly unshackled atmosphere. I feigned thanking Karen, who had arrived late, white and angry for her unwavering commitment to community safety. And in appreciation of that commitment, I announced tugging down a projector screen I'd set up in advance. Let's review our community's impressive surveillance improvements. Panic flashed on Karen's face. The video I presented was painstakingly sanitized clips of the hidden devices Miles and I had mapped. Anonymized timestamps from innocent households with peculiar data uploads. A graph showing data exports to foreign servers. I never mentioned spies or Sable Eagle. I just presented the facts and let the gossiping crowd draw conclusions halfway through. Karen snapped. She made a wild dash towards my house's primary breaker box on the sidewall. I smirked inwardly. She flipped the master switch with a clanging bang. Nothing happened. The lights and music kept going. The projector running on the backup generator that I'd installed. Secretly, someone in the audience laughed. Someone else loudly offered Karen a hot dog. She screamed something inarticulate about traitors and stormed off, almost falling over a pink flamingo. Within the hour video of the whole thing, including the power failure, reached Reddit. HOA Karen tries to cancel. BBQ gets burned later that night. The actual confirmation came reading through my own secure router logs. I found proof of an active, highly sophisticated connection attempt trying to break through my VPN tunnel not local. This one had reflected off a satellite uplink. They knew I knew Sable Eagle, or whoever Bishop was working for, had come out of the shadows Miles. And I researched everything. The new hack attempt, the BBQ video. The server logs, one trend emerged. The unmarked white van. It had appeared near my home at precise 12-hour intervals throughout the past week. Always parking 3 houses away, always staying for a particular 43 minutes. Too regular for spooking. It was as though extraction data retrieval personnel Miles operated a thermal filter on the latest video. 2 people left the house carrying a heavy hard case. and what looked like a disguised antenna array standard issue gear. Non-standard suburban activity. The house belonged to a retired postal worker and her cat. Unless the cat was running a numbers racket, somebody had set up a listening post or data center right under our noses. Driving the van's partial sketch against some of Miles's darker database entry points created a hair-raising match. A similar vehicle had been picked up in the area of the last known residence of David Chen, another agency agent who'd vanished without explanation a year before, after handling sensitive counterintel cases. This wasn't just surveillance. This network may be whacking loose ends. Then came the worst nauseating discovery buried deep in the HOA server image cache. Mislabeled as property line problem ref B was an interior shot in my living room date, stamped the night before I returned from Switzerland, before the locks changed. The timestamp matched the minute the secure notice I'd received that the pasta courier target in my Swiss op had been taken into custody and had gone dark. It all clicked into place with ghastly clarity. The mission the courier receiving caught the network is using the break-in when I was not around. Not only to snoop, but most likely to hunt for something relating to the mission, or worse, to drop something the lockout did not have. Karen's malicious revenge. It was an action by Sable Eagle to provide cover control access and deploy their puppet while they had finished their job in my house. They'd entered my home. The game was on. They thought they were narrowing it down. They didn't realize that I was about to spring my own trap. The realization struck me like a blow to the body. They'd been inside the lockout. It wasn't disciplinary. It was functional cover, during Karen's playing tin pot dictator on the doorstep. Sable Eagle's agents had likely cleaned out my home for fallout from the Swiss mission, having planted high-tech bugs that I hadn't uncovered yet. Thought they were outdoing themselves, working behind the scenes, manipulating the situations they had to push into the light, utilizing their own pornography. As the enticement Miles, at first wary of the in-your-face goading that I contemplated risky. Alex, these people work dirty. Recall my firewall specifically. I countered all over the encrypted comms. They react as normal when pinched. We need to pin their hand, bring someone over Karen, and reduce this network to ash. So openly that they cannot bury it under the rug. It stops. Now the strategy was simple, capitalizing on Karen's fatal weaknesses, arrogance and paranoia. I obtained a huge Black Pelican case standard military issue grade throughout the top. I placed a bold yellow sticker marked Asset Disposal. Approved eyes only inside. I placed the bait in slowly docked documents, an official appearing but entirely fictitious authorization, dated 2 weeks before the lockout, authorizing Community Coordinator Kay Peterson to oversee sensitive data acquisition on behalf of a private intelligence contractor. Aegis Analytics, an inactive firm Bishop was affiliated with some years back. Included were fictitious encrypted communication records between Karen and a map annotating fictional high-priority surveillance points all over the neighborhood, adequate enough to look plausible, incriminatory, and in its entirety intimidating to someone realizing they were getting in over their head. I left the case ostentatiously by my front door, slightly scraped as if recently delivered a microscopic camera hidden within the bird feeder. Across the road fed a real-time stream via 3 VPN channels to Miles and me. Then drove a rented, unobtrusive plumbing van, drove down the street and waited. Didn't take even 2 hours. Karen marched up my driveway clipboard significantly. In absentia substituted by an air of self-importance with an underlying feeling of unease. She glanced around with the furtiveness of a Bond villain bent over the case, knocked on it, then donning a pair of immaculate white gloves. She pulled out of her handbag, began working the latches as soon as the second latch opened. A quiet warning beeped on my phone. Bait taken, I noticed her eyes scan the documents, her face becoming white noticeably. She forced the entire packet into her big purse and walked purposefully back toward the HOA office phase 2. I immediately activated the internal camera feed from the server room we'd just entered 5 minutes later. Karen was on screen wildly rummaging through files, then dialing a number, her voice escalating into a frantic screech. I could have sworn during the quiet feed. Then he appeared, dark suit, high-end shoes, icy eyes Bishop, just as the grainy file photos had depicted him from his days at the CIA, before he burned out selling intel. He seemed utterly serene as Karen pushed the counterfeit documents in his face. He didn't even glance at them, just took the packet, pushed it into a heavy-duty shredder beside the dead servers, and glared her dead in the eye. I zoomed in, reading his lips perfectly. If you talk, you disappear. Karen crushed the last shreds of her authority, melting into raw fear. She wasn't just a puppet, she was expendable. As Bishop emerged from the HOA building and strode toward a black anonymous sedan a few feet away, I put the plumbing van into gear. Aiming lot caused him to slam on his brakes, tires squeaking softly. Our eyes met through his windshield for maybe 2 seconds. No words, just raw, cold acknowledgement. He saw a professional. I saw a traitor who'd underestimated his target. A flash of surprise. Perhaps annoyance flickered across his face as he jerked the wheel and accelerated in a hurry that night. When the fireworks began in earnest, Miles and I packaged the evidence, the server logs, the surveillance maps, screenshots of the Sable Eagle messages, photographs of the concealed devices, and the pièce de resistance, the crystal-clear video of Bishop threatening Karen in the HOA office. We packaged it in 3 encrypted packets, Miles working his magic through layers of obfuscation. At the same time, sent them to our contacts. The investigative reporter with the local news, the independent journalist who has a reputation for uncovering corruption, and my federal contact who owed me from the Belarus affair. Then Miles took it upon himself to do a complete digital cleanup, removing our trail scent and scrubbed. He confirmed, sounding tired but pleased. Let's see who bites first. The next morning, while the digital storm of notice, I gave my community seminar on heretofore publicized lockpicking basics. How to keep what's yours. 15 fascinated, bewildered, and pretty nervous residents showed up along with 2 men in ill-fitting golf shirts who were definitely observers. I was not deterred. I taught them about pin tumblers and wafer locks, slipping in metaphors about not having strangers alter your entry, regarding the difference between rules and control, regarding the way the actual threat has a tendency to wield a clipboard and sensible shoes. Midway through, Karen appeared looking like a ghost. She took a seat at the back, quietly staring at her hands. As I finished thanking others, I made eye contact with her always question authority, I thought, even when it seemed entirely reasonable. She groaned but did not glance up. The repercussions were quick by evening. The first newspaper story came out, based on leaked materials, and video headlines screamed, "Suburban spy ring used for covert surveillance. Former CIA agent linked to neighborhood watch system." Neighbors started taking apart birdhouses and garden gnomes. An urgent petition to end the HOA board collected hundreds of signatures in a single night. Karen's home went black. 2 nights later, a moving truck emptied it out before dawn. She had disappeared. Bishop was publicly named in subsequent reports. He was noted as wanted for federal interrogation before news outlets discreetly reported he had disappeared. The HOA lawyers issued an agitated denial before they resigned as lawsuits fueled by the leaked records of illegal monitoring. And fines started piling up. Miles confirmed his equipment were in place, though the DDoS assault had led him to move major hardware worth it. He grunted into the comms, viewing that network map make the headlines priceless. The network had been compromised, unveiled. Karen was missing. Bishop was on the run. Or worse, checkmate, or so I thought. In the weeks following the downfall of Karen's suburban spy ring, a strained silence descended upon the community, the sort that follows a fever, breaking the scandalized HOA board, formally broken up in a sparsely populated emergency meeting, in a borrowed church basement. Folks began talking once more, repairing mailboxes without fear of prosecution, even planting outrageously colored lawn flamingos with defiant pride. Someone began selling t-shirts online that said, "Unlock your rights," with a cross twig and hairpin. I purchased 3. The notorious birdhouse cameras disappeared overnight. The neighborhood took a deep breath again, battered but freed. My own work was harder won. There were yells, naturally courteous, but persistent questions by men in hushed suits across secure lines. How had I gotten so smart so quickly? I stood with the tidied-up version I was teased on my own front porch, and I repaid him. Most accepted it. Professionals' respect for holding home ground. But the persistent questions on how a local HOA network got my agency designation hung uncomfortably. It wasn't general knowledge. The inference hung in the air. The rot could not have been confined to Bishop and his inner circle. There could be a leak somewhere closer home. Another threat to watch out for one rainy afternoon cozy. Within my newly arrived and stringently screened mail was an anomaly. A heavy cream-colored envelope handwritten address sealed with old-fashioned wax. No return address on one sheet of thick paper or a plain typed message. You weren't the only one they were watching. You reminded us to watch back no name. No signature evidence that the network's reach and its potential targets had actually been wider than only our small Coldate cluster. I torched the letter, but the message remained etched in my mind. The house needed a final good cleaning this time, with experience of what I might be looking for. I found them 3 advanced bugs I had missed on my initial sweep. One concealed in a light switch, another concealed behind the fridge compressor. Both well hidden and requiring very little power. A third high-frequency transmitter was buried in the attic insulation, likely planted in the pre-lockout break-in. They were now disabled, most likely remotely when the network was hacked. But finding them was dark validation. Karen hadn't installed those. She'd only unlocked the door to the master players. My new security system went beyond HOA compliance, biometric locks on every access point offline, backups only layered 0 cloud storage, 0 remote access. If you weren't me, you weren't coming in. I added a decoy safe full of Monopoly money, programmed my smart assistant to spout random ominous Russian proverbs at random times, and replaced the welcome man again. This one just said, "Try me." Then the last twist, a moving truck pulled up in front of Karen's empty house. Unloading boxes marked Gove training equipment clearance verified was a woman I knew right away. Sarah, one of my more promising Langley trained some years back. Newly back from an internal rotation, I sat on my porch watching her and offered a bright professional smile. "Heard the neighborhood was quiet now, Alex," she called out. "Quiet?" I echoed, walking past my mind-racing coincidence. Or was Langley putting a friendly face around? Comparatively speaking, I helped her and her husband, a quiet guy with watchful eyes, had an anticipated package. He chuckled when I summarized briefly the HOA drama. Seriously, she tried to evict a CIA lockpick teacher by replacing the locks. He shook his head, bold move, bold. I agreed, and wonderfully idiotic later that night, sitting on my porch. The air finally free of Karen's suffocating rain and tasting far away. Of normally, I felt a sense of control return, not absolute peace I'd learned better now, but the earned control that comes from watchfulness for sport. I brought up the feed from the micro camera I'd stashed, aimed at the now empty server room in the old HOA office. Dust motes danced in the dark for now, because around here locks aren't what keep things tight, things that people do. And this time, I thought sweeping the empty street, where Sarah's lights now glowed warmly,